Let's begin because we have a rich agenda with a lot to discuss and little time, and I'd love for us to jump right into it. So my name's Shannon Pfohman, and I'm one of the project directors at AEIDL, sorry. And I have the honor of announcing today the second webinar that we have on water resource management in focus, insights and impact from projects. And this is the second webinar that we have under the European Local Innovation Forum's new thematic community on environment and climate. So welcome everyone. If we could move to the next slide, please. I'd like to start by just identifying some of our house rules. As usual, you've been attending so many webinars since the start of COVID. I imagine you know to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. We want to let you know in advance that we will be recording the webinar. And if you have questions and want to speak, just raise your hand with the little hand symbol or write in the chat to let us know that you'd like to intervene. The next slide, please. I wanted to take some time to just announce who is speaking today at our important webinar on water resource management. So to start, we have Aline van Moerbecke, who is the water resource management expert for the project L'Acqua si Pianta, and my colleagues here, Aline and Marco Pianalto, will also pronounce the name properly and their own names properly. But these are our two experts who've been supporting in the implementation of this project. It will be followed by a presentation from Yona Geerling, who's also representing the project Use Less Water in Germany. And following these two presentations, we're going to have some times for question and answer, as well as a discussion. And because originally around 50 people were registered to this webinar, we thought it would be better to have small breakout sessions to allow for more interaction among the participants. So we'll break you out and we'll have a closing by our Managing Director, Claire Jordan. Next slide, please. So what's important, I've mentioned already our new thematic community, but I haven't really explained what AEIDL is, what ELIF is. So let me start by just telling you a little bit about the European Association for Innovation and Local Development, which is what AEIDL stands for. We're based in Brussels, and our association is learning from and fostering community-led innovation to revitalize local communities across Europe. And our goal is to really gather innovative practices in areas such as territorial development, employment, entrepreneurship, social inclusion, environment, climate action, and of course, green growth, the topic of today. And our ambition is to add value by supporting and facilitating peer learning among local national actors across Europe and analyzing, evaluating relevant EU policies and advocacy actions to enhance the support of community local action towards empowering citizens to build a stronger Europe in these different areas. ELIF, I've already mentioned, is the European Local Innovation Forum, which is framed around 3 different thematic areas linked to the territorial and regional development, the social inclusion, entrepreneurship, and employment, as well as the environment and climate as our third and newest thematic community. So the next slide. Essentially, what we aim to do is to bring different stakeholders together to be able to learn from each other and share experiences with each other. And that, of course, should be evident from the webinar structure today. So thank you for all those who've participated. We aim to have a participatory approach. Unfortunately, we were not able to have a European Commission representative speaking today, but they did give me some speaking points of what they wanted me to convey to you. And that's some facts essentially about their new campaign on water. So Europe is warming twice as fast as the rest of the world, and its water systems are under increasing stress. Water scarcity affects 30% of Europeans and 20% of land each year. 70% of European citizens have expressed concern about water pollution and water scarcity, and yet almost half of them do not feel well informed about water-related problems in their country. And this is why the WaterWise EU campaign was launched by the European Commission towards contributing a water-resilient Europe by 2050. Our water cycle, the process by which water moves through the Earth's land, seas, and atmosphere, is disrupted and needs to be fixed. Human activity and climate change is damaging ecosystems and leading to more evaporation, more floods, more drought, and less water for us all and all others and all other life that depends on water. So the WaterWise EU communication campaign is aiming to raise awareness around this and to shine a spotlight on the many solutions available. Solutions such as boosting natural water storage, replenishing groundwater, and rebuilding soil health, but also smart water management, water efficiency, and reuse. The European Commission believes that by working together, we can change existing perceptions of water, and the campaign is there to collect promising practices, such as those that are going to be presented today. So the Commission representative that I was in contact with is suggested that you indeed consider uploading your practices following the event and participate in the campaign. And for all of you to know, so we add the hyperlink in the PowerPoint presentation, and we will share the PowerPoint presentation with you following the webinar today. And we will also structure our small breakout sessions according to these topics of not enough water leading to drought, too much water leading to flooding, polluted water, and poorly managed water systems and administrations behind it. So next slide, please. I'd now like to invite you to participate in our Mentimeter. So we told you we want this to be a participatory approach. So you could either scan the QR code or use the hyperlink that should be added in the chat for you to be able to access. Yes. And from there, we have just a minute to answer a few questions. So the first question, we want to know who is in the room? What best describes your role and your work? So I let you take some time to answer that, whether you're a water expert, an academic, an activist, a policymaker, an NGO, a concerned citizen. We also want to know where you live. Where are you located geographically? And what is the biggest water issue? I'm sorry, I think we've gone too far there. Laura?
Just the first three.
Yeah,
So
just
a
the
bit of a
first
sense
three.
of who you are, your role, your work. There's going to be a map of Europe. And the second question, you can place a pin just so we have a sense geographically where people are from. And then the third question is just related to the 4 areas that Shannon explained that are also part of the EU water campaign. To indicate, to rank, you can select the order, which is the biggest issue in your area where you live, in your town, in your region, and rank it according to the impact of that. Now see, we're getting in some responses, so I can share the results in just a moment, maybe.
Thanks, Laura. So I imagine people have been able to finish filling in those 3 questions. So we would have to stop sharing the PowerPoint so Laura can then share her screen and analyze the results.
Okay, you should be able to see my screen now. Yeah, okay. So,
and Laura, would you mind introducing yourself as well? Because I have not done that. I apologize.
That's right. So my name is Laura. Currently calling in from Germany. I work as a network weaver for ECOLISE, a European network focused on sustainable local community initiatives. And together with AEDL, we've been part of implementing the communities for climate initiative with DG Regio, where we have also the two projects sharing here. So we've been working on this, and I'm very excited to dive deeper into the topic of water. And I see who's in the room today. We have a few water experts, which is exciting. We're looking forward to hearing some of your knowledge also in the breakout rooms that we're going to have later. Two people who said from local community, 5 were part of NGOs or kind of organizers and activists, and also 7 people from academia or students. So that's interesting to see here. Geographically, we see a bit of map, definitely a cluster around Belgium. I know it's a bit small, but I think we get a sense. We have also from France, Portugal, the UK, 2 places in Germany, Northern Italy. There's quite a few people in Italy also. Turkey, and this one, probably Hungary, no? Hungary, Romania. So nice spread. It's good to see. And finally, I'm going to share here in terms of the ranking on the water issues. So based on all of your responses, flooding seems to be a key issue, followed really closely by water pollution. Also drought comes third, but not with a big distance, and water mismanagement as a fourth issue. So I think we can stop here, and we will have an opportunity now to hear more from the project. But I guess I'll hand it over back to you, Shannon, no?
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura. And if we can re-add the PowerPoint, I will now take the time to introduce our first project. I'd like to give the floor first to Aline van Moerbecke, who is, as I've mentioned already, the thematic expert, and Marco Pianalto, who's the community facilitator of the project L'Acqua si Pianata. And they will be explaining what they did together with Elizabeth, the project lead, who was unfortunately not available today. To just let you know, Aline is a Flemish-born citizen and based in Spain since 2000. She's a permaculture educator, designer, and co-founder of Permacultural Mediterranea, the PermaMed, and La Casa Integral, a permacultural design studio. She has a number of degrees in the field and is truly an expert who will be able to tell us more around her focus on ecosystem and water cycle restoration through the water soil vegetation nexus and water stories that she's aware of through student and practitioner engagement and regeneration of landscapes and communities. I will also introduce Marco at the same time before I give you to the floor. He has a degree in agricultural sciences from the University of Padua and completed postgraduate training from the University of Gastronomic Sciences in Palenzo, the Advanced School in Sustainability and Food Policies. He's been working in Spain for over a decade as a water engineer, and he's undertaken introductory and advanced training in permaculture and Monsanto permaculture at the Monsanto Permaculture Institute. And his diploma is also vast. He's got numerous degrees. I won't name them all because there's really too many for me to list the expertise of our 2 experts who are about to present. So I'll stop there and give first Aline the floor, please.
Thank you, Shannon. And yes, both Marco and me are permaculture designers, and we came together in this project, which is being led by Elisabeth, who unfortunately could not join us here today, a very inspiring young woman who has taken it on herself to guide the community project called L'Acqua si Pianta in Liguria. And when we start the permaculture design, first we will look at the context. So in this case, giving you a bit of a macro overview of where we are. So we are looking at the north of the coastal area here in the bay near Genoa, which means that we are in an area that is tightly sitting between the Mediterranean Sea with all the tourism pressure that you can then immediately conjure up in front of your eyes, and then behind them up high are the Alps. So snow is a given in this context as well. So in the Ligurian province there is a lot of yellow and red dots on this map. What are they standing for? They're actually indicating that there has been a landslide taking place in this area. So the geology is a delicate one, and if we are designing for water and for its restoration of the water cycle locally, then these are all topics that we need to dive deeper into. So we asked Elisabeth to gather a lot of data for us to get a base map for the water situation in their context. And if we look at the next slide, then we are particularly looking at rainfall. So over the last 20 years, we see that there is a big margin of rainfall going from almost 200 liters per year to less than 1/3 of that, to down to almost 500 liters per year. And those 500 liters per year, or just over, they can actually fall in one day. If we look at the red column to the right, in 2001, the major rainfall event took place in October of that year, and it gave the area more than 400 liters coming down. Now, this is more and more normal every day. We have seen it last year in many areas, Algeria, in Central Europe, Austria, Poland, north of Italy as well. And of course, Valencia may be still fresh in your minds as well. Valencia actually got hit again yesterday, as well as Ibiza. So these extreme rainfall events, and then remember what we saw on the previous slide, an area prone to landslide occurrences. We need to be very careful when designing for the restoration of the water cycle. And on the next slide, we can actually also take a look at further details that are continuously being collected. And I would say documenting and gathering data is very important before we interact in any area. So we observe what the situation is. And on these maps, we can see that water erosion is very critical, a critical topic in a lot of areas throughout Italy, but also especially above Liguria, in that same curve, in that same Mediterranean bay that we were just looking at in a more close-up map. And on the right-hand side, we see that there's also a dot of red of critical situation of soil compaction. So all of this again brings that downslope where we are actually finding the community project that we are today talking about is at risk of landslides. So how can we then restore the water cycle? Because this was the petition that Elisabeth put forward to the Communities for Climate funding project, in which we were also engaged as water experts and community facilitator, Marco and myself. So coming to a base map of the project itself, on the next slide, we're now zooming in on a more detailed overview, we see that there are 3 buildings on the land that is under management. This property belongs to the local administration, and Elisabeth and her team are actually managing and caretaking this land and the 3 properties. One of them, the one in the middle, the red marked building, is actually a refuge, a mountain refuge. So people can come and stay there. There is community areas, etc. It is well loved because the area is a hiker area, a natural reserve. There is geological parks nearby, etc. So plenty of people pass through this specific community project, but the challenge is year after year there is less water available to run this project. So what other details do we need to know? Elisabeth gathered some more. On the next slide, we see that there are some water courses running nearby, and the properties are between them. So the buildings on the left-hand side of the middle torrent are the top building and the refuge itself. And then the house that Elisabeth is currently living in is to the right by the Rio della Colla. None of these water courses are perennial. That means they are only running with water at times when there has been a big rainfall or where it has been raining for a longer period of time. So these are not rivers as such. These are rather torrents, seasonal. So carrying on from here on the next slide, we look at the properties and the buildings themselves. What do we see once we get there? We have a first aerial view of the refuge itself. Now, there's one challenge in this project. The buildings are listed, and since the community is caretaking the land and the community project, they are not as such allowed to touch the buildings. So this is a challenge that they need to work around and creatively think about innovative solutions to their water challenges. So we see that there are some downspouts installed. There's no guttering going all around the roof. And of course, as human settlers on natural land, we need to take responsibility for land that we are sealing off. So if we are preventing water from entering into the soil and into the aquifers, we need to make sure that we actually lead this water to a safe place where it can find a slow meandering way downslope or a slow way to infiltrate into the aquifer. So in this case, unfortunately, some of the downspouts are just pointing down, no further help to infiltrate or to have a slow meandering pathway downslope. So this is leading to erosion. There are also roads that have the aspect of the photo in the middle on the lower end. So this is rock being visible because all of the soil has washed away. There is one little downspout that is actually connected to one tank. We are standing around it in the photo on the top right. It's only 1,000 liters. Here, I think it is important what Shannon mentioned earlier, the European Commission representative wanting to put across that information about the water cycle and about where our water comes from and how do we then use it and send it back into the ecosystem. All this type of information is important, I believe, because in this case, standing around a tank of 1,000 liters should immediately ring a bell and say, well, what is that going to do? Because it is not going to cover a lot. If we think that a medium usage of a person per day would be between 120 and 150 liters of water per day, then you can think that we wouldn't even survive the week with one of these tanks. So this water is, of course, fabulous for us to store it rather than let it quickly run down the hill and into the sea, where, yes, it goes back into the water cycle, but it will take many, many years to once more become a drop of fresh water after having traveled through the ocean, in which case it becomes salt water for a long time. So our lives depend on fresh water, as well as the lives of vegetation and other animals in our ecosystems, like the ones in the middle on the top. This is what is happening all around the refuge. There is a lot of extensive animal husbandry taking place, which in years of drought, of course, is not to the benefit of the land. It's, of course, 100% better than animals being in a stable, intensive, industrial animal husbandry, but it is still not well enough understood that animals have a very high beneficial impact if they are managed in a holistic way. This meaning smaller plots, larger groups, eating the vegetation in that smaller plot for a lot less time. In this case, where they have access to the whole field for a lot longer, they can go and pick and choose, and they can eat the juiciest little green grass that may actually well have a very deep root and a lot of reserves in the root that could actually be the vegetation that then creates the soil that we need to store more water. But anyway, I'm not going to go down that route. There's a lot to be said for regenerative agriculture, but I do think that in this case, it is a challenge that we need to learn to observe when we are looking at the landscape. What is the context of this project? So on the next slide, just resuming quickly the challenges of this particular community project. High rainfall events are ever more frequently the same world around. We have, in this case, a very low storage capacity, no authority to intervene in the construction. The area in and of itself is prone to landslides, and there is also added to this agricultural degradation, compaction, and water erosion risk. So socio-economically, this area is no longer attractive to the youth, and people are moving away to the coastal areas where tourism is promising a higher income. This same tourism can actually also be putting more pressure on the groundwater reserves. So water going downstream, of course, the water is then going to be flowing fast to these tourist areas as well. So the lack of information of why we are facing these challenges lie at the base, I think, of starting to be able to become innovative, creative, and think about nature-based solutions. We need to become intimate friends, I always say, with the element of water and understanding where we can be of help and cover the role that we have within our ecosystems. So let's look at those possible solutions. We then went on to speak to Elisabeth, and in the next slide we shared a few of the little drawings that we made for the community project, just to explain that what we believe is indeed the nexus between water, vegetation, and soil being the solution to this local context and many other contexts as well. Elisabeth had a strong interest in learning more about agroforestry systems, and in this case we believe that that is indeed the way to go, because with the installation of agroforestry and agroforestry lines, so animals could still move between rows of trees and shrubs. As you can see on the second image, there is a chicken underneath a fruit tree, etc. And if we work with the lay of the land and guide water through this lay of the land in a slow, meandering way, then we will give it time to actually infiltrate and make sure that these plants can actually cultivate soil, because the soil is the biggest deposit deposit of water, and we feel that that is where we can actually create this deposit rather than having to purchase a bigger tank, which is, of course, a possibility. But where we are humans in a project, we are using water, we are also maybe polluting this. But if we look at our own pollution, at our own bodily excrements, then when we connect these with plants and agroforestry systems, these systems, they often need fertilizing, so they need nutrients. So by means of nature-based solutions, we can actually use phytodeporation, plant systems, lagoon systems, constructed wetlands to take the largest charge of pollution by our own excrements, etc. Of course, a lot of people these days are taking medication or supplementation, etc. So we try to get the biggest risk out of the water, and then we feed it back into ecosystems that can actually feed us and feed the ecosystem all around us at the same time. Shallow ponds can be incorporated in this system as well, and shallow ephemeral ponds in this type of context we believe would also have the multifunction of offering more biodiversity to the local ecosystems. So in this case we were lucky enough to have a community facilitator that is also an expert on all of these topics. So if on the next slide I just quickly run through all of the possible solutions, we see actually that before we get to the list of possible solutions, we also invited the local community and to actually want to harvest this intelligence of the community, as we also would like to do later in this webinar in small breakout rooms. The community needs to understand what you are trying to do, because you will not be able to do this type of work on your own. So Elisabeth invited local community members, also some community members from a little bit further out. We invited some people that we knew in the area, and between us all, after a short introduction by myself and my partner at La Casa Integral about the broken water cycle and how could we actually help restore it, there was a vivid session in smaller groups. We were helped by the SDG cards made by Gaia Education, and that kind of jigged us in our creative thinking. And then we heard each other's possible solutions, and this type of community work is, I think, at the base of actually being able to keep community climate action vivid and alive. And of course, a bit of food and drink always helps to keep motivation going. So just to finish off my part and to give the words to Marco, listing on the next slide then the possible solutions that we saw for this project. We do believe, indeed, as Shannon mentioned earlier, information on the why of these higher rainfall events being ever more frequent is priority. We need to share information by any means and channels that we see fit. Creating more storage capacity and catching rain from any of these surfaces that we as humanity have made impermeable is adamant as well. So creating the sponge that the soil can be, cultivating this soil would be our #1 solution for this particular context, but also worldwide. For the dry periods, we can store water in larger deposits like flexible bladder tanks that could then be covered with wooden decks so that you could still have the usable space for community gathering, or you could actually have natural lagoons and wetlands. For this specific type of element, we would need to look at further soil sampling and test pits, etc. And we would also need the collaboration of the administration there, because it has been a thing to actually drain our agricultural lands over the last few centuries, to now restore wetlands and to actually make areas hold more water, we need policy on our side, and currently that is not easy. So make available as well training in regenerative agriculture, showcase practical information, demonstrate that actual projects are already doing this and that it is also economically viable. Support community building, as with the Communities for Climate project that we were engaged in last year, and harvest collective intelligence, because between us all, I'm sure we know it all, and we can actually help each other out with little details that we may not know about. So in this particular case of the Rifugio Il Scaverna, we can take the opportunity and collaborate with the local administration, create a regenerative tourism hub, and demonstrate that nature-based solutions are possible in this context, and that the community is actually happy to work together with people at any level to come and give them a hand to show that it is possible. So over to you, Marco.
Thank you, Aline. I don't know how many minutes do I have left, just to regulate how
Actually,
much time.
you're already a little bit over time, so
Yeah,
if you can make it very short, that would be helpful.
I noticed that. So no problem. It's just a couple of slides regarding a particular event during the third visit that I did as a community facilitator. Exceptional event occurred. There was a really strong flood coming from a valley, generating a lot of troubles. And so driving on the work done by Aline and his group on design phase, we could skip to the next slide if you want. What we did was all together with hand tools, no machinery, just act on an urgent issue, that flood, and we turn that problem to solution, as we say in permaculture. And so we diverted the flood towards this handmade pond that we built on a ridge of the valley, and then diverted to a safer place with a culvert, and so no more eroding the land. But I just put a few slides if you want to go on, just to underline how with little tools and design tools in your mind, you can really go a long way. We were assisted by a thriving community of volunteers and people there, and so for me it was a magic experience. That's why I wanted to illustrate it as best as I could, because I mean you can design all the thing you want, but then you have to involve the community in it. Otherwise, it's always a top-down intervention, and what we want in permaculture is a bottom-up approach. So just to, if you want to skip to the next slides, what I want to convey is the idea that it's really simple to deal with water and to build an alphabet of solution that then we will deal with bigger problems. And always remember that water is easy to manage on top of the watershed, and then the lower you get, it gets harder. So we were lucky to find a sweet spot that could converge all the energies of the people of the community experts, and I'm quite satisfied of what we did together. And the atmosphere was really thriving, happy. We were covered in mud and really tired, but it was worth it.
Thank you so much. It's been very intense information in a small period of time, but I've been very impressed also by the energy that Marco was conveying at the very end of it being easy to solve all these problems as long as you're working bottom up and with the volunteers at the local level. So what an innovative example. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to move quickly now to our next speaker. I've already introduced Yona, but let me just add a few things as well. So Yona Geerling has been involved the past 8 years in ecological projects such as the development of permacultural farms in Germany and Spain, and in the Communities for Climate project. He was active at Vitopia, one of the interesting activities that drew him to this community half a year ago. His involvement in the project gave him insight into the importance of the social aspects of the projects like these. So I will pass the floor to you, Yona. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a magnificent presentation just now. Thank you, Aline and Marco. Behind me, you can see a part of the Alhambra. This magnificent project was my inspiration to start thinking about water and working with it. After a couple of years, I landed in Vitopia. You can see I'm going to talk a bit about Vitopia because I think it's important to give this setting more locally about what the project is all about and what the social aspects are all about. So we can move to the next slide, please. The project has actually really started in 2012 in an old tree nursery, and to us it's also very beautiful that we can continue something that has already started in the 1800s and try to apply new concepts with the old structures. This place you can see is where it all started. A couple of families has lived there for years while developing the rest of the project. Next slide, please. A large part of it was also developing a vision and knowing what the community was all about. And it's not just a place, it's not just a group of people, but it's the combination of all these things that is making this community thrive. We're also very much into integrating what we have around us. It's not always easy because in Magdeburg, where the situation is, let's say, very restricted by legal and local conditions. We try to make something that can invite the people and get a new idea for what is possible and see that they can come in and experiment and do some research. And in that flow, learn about what you can do to be responsible for your surroundings and make things sustainable. We have got some things like a cafe that's fully vegan. We have a hostel that's available for people that are coming by on bikes. We also rent out bikes, we rent out canoes, and we also gather people around from all parts of life to join us. For instance, last weekend we had a very nice forum theater where people with an immigration background could show about their problems in Magdeburg, which is of course getting more and more shifting to the right side. But we hope to give them an alternative and a place to be. Next slide, please. So this is the whole area where we are working. It's embedded in a nature reserve. If you look at the left side, that's where also the Elbe is flowing. And in 2000 13, it swapped over and we had a huge flooding over there. But since then, the Elbe has gotten less and less water. So we're not going to have that problem anymore. But on the other hand, we have this thing that because there's less and less water, we also want to do something to show how it can be done differently. That is where the toilets are going to come in. In the middle, we can see a small garden. To the right, we've seen these parallels structures. That's where our composters are at this moment. Next slide, please. So we are trying to do as much as possible with as little as possible resources as we can. And the water is there a very important part. When we started this, there were already the regular toilets. Nowadays, you can use a toilet with 6 liters of water, but the old toilets still have 12 liters of water, which means 33 liters of water a day, which is 12,161 liters a year per person. This is flushed down the drain, needs to be picked up later at a clarification plant where a lot of energy is being used to clear it again, what we first put into the water. So our dry toilets project, we don't use hardly any water to clean the toilets, but to clean the containers in which the feces are being gathered. That costs a bit of water, but in comparison, it's nothing. We started in 2018 and took really a couple of years to see what the best solutions would be. And after 1 year of experimenting, they were implemented. But it's still an ongoing process. Next slide, please. Because we still have to know what goes in and what comes out of it. Each half year at this moment, we clean out all our containers and also make a good overview of what we have now. Over the time, we see a really more constant flow of how things go. Next slide, please. We could not have done it without some support. Finicio is a company that's really focused on doing these things. And it's not just the dry toilets themselves as we have now, but it's also compost toilets that are being put into large events. And they gather all these things in Eberswalde, in the neighborhood of Berlin, and make compost of that. And there are a few things that they can do that we cannot do because they are larger and also have the possibilities to do more university research, being very near to the University of Eberswalde. The data that we see on the right side is data for one toilet and the amount of water that is being saved, the amount of energy that's being saved. And on the other hand, by gathering all these feces, the amount of humus that we can produce and the amount of good soil that we can reuse. Next slide, please. So I'd like to show the video now. Okay, we're going to show the toilets that we have. It's a bit different from, for instance, the toilet that I have in my garden, which is being produced by a very cheap container. But our toilets have been a bit more involved and a bit more expensive. They're actually very beautiful. And you can see two compartments here. That's where the feces go, and that is where the urine is going in. So if the feces go down, it's not always as smooth as this. And so there are really very big containers that we need, a very big, oh my God, röhre. I'm sorry about this.
Pipes.
Pipes. Thank you so much. There's also coming a lot of stench from it, but we control this by ventilators. It's being gathered in these huge containers. Of course, we use only natural paper, but they still have to be cleaned and have to be done every week, so we can get the right mixture within one of these containers. We are using a bacteria, and you can see it over here. I can put out some recipe for this later. And so we put it in these containers and then we spray it. And every now and then we have to change the containers. We gather them in our yards where they sit for quite some time, so they can just mix already a bit. And then we have this straw that we are going to use in these large composters. These composters have been constructed in a way that the water will be going down and will evaporate, so it doesn't get into the nature. We use our own compost and different tools to make the right mixture. So we also protect our walls, because otherwise it will get in through the walls into the nature. Then we make a layer of straw and put the compost onto that. So that's our feces. Then we put some rock flour on it and spray again with the bacteria. Then a last bit of straw on top. And then we take care that the rain doesn't come in. And this is our toilet outside. Next slide, please. So it takes quite a lot of building skills to make the right composters. They are being used to transport the compost from stage to stage. That's why we have 3 of them. Next slide, please. And this is the toilet outside, because it's also important that we have, when we have visitors, that they also can experience what it's like to use them, and sometimes have also an excursion to get the idea. Next slide, please. The toilets have to be cleaned, and it's not always that easy. The large pipes don't clog. In 5 years, we've had 1 time that it was clogged. The urine is a different story, because there's also a lot of proteins in urine. And every year we really have to get into it and get it out. It's a dirty job. Next one, please. So doing something like this is not something that you can just go on a limb and say, okay, we are going to do this. So that's why it's taken 2 years, and it was really a shared group decision. It's real work. It's for some people, it's like every 2 days they do something. Other people do every few months a lot of work. But getting it from the containers into the compost and getting the compost from one composter into the next is real work. It's also not everybody is comfortable with working with feces and urine. So it's something that we also have to introduce our new members to it. Not everybody will, but most can get used to it and also get a sort of actually love for the process. Now, we are not alone, of course. We are a community within a society, and it's got its pros and cons. The pros, of course, has been very clear by the support by Communities for Climate and Eva Stutzel from Team Linde, who have been very active in how we can create this and how we can have a real good process underlying all these steps. But being in the community is also Germany. The German legal aspects have a large impact. We cannot use our compost and give it away to anybody. Our garden, as you have seen on one of the previous slides, is not that big. So we are starting to get too much compost actually for what we have. Next slide, please. So we're looking at that new things to do. The urine is still going into the sewer, and we would like to make a transformation system in which we can use it for first algae and then feed fish with the algae, and then the fish will go back into the Elbe. So we hope to alleviate that part of what we are still adding into the sewer. We are also reaching out. So we have been supported by Finizio, and now the next step will be that we have a mobile toilet that we can rent out for projects, events, and so forth in Magdeburg and the surroundings. Because we have too much compost in the long run, we are also having Finizio process quite some of that in the coming years, probably. Another way that we are thinking about it is maybe using the shelves of Finizio, which is actually also a nice idea for anyone who wants to combine some farms, for instance, to do this kind of recycling. Because Finizio has thought out a quite interesting process there. Okay, next slide. I'm open for some questions, and also afterwards, if the presentation and this event has been done, we are very much open for questions, for visits, and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Also, a very interesting presentation, and probably a topic that many have never really thought about very frequently. I remember the Commission being very excited about this project, and the amount of water and energy that was being saved from this, but was also fearful of the content, because this is not something people generally like to talk about, but it's a really great practice on innovative solutions and water saving examples. So thank you so very much. I'd like to pass the floor to Laura, who's going to moderate this next section.
Yes, Thank you, Shannon and everyone. Some of you maybe already have seen that in the Menti slides. There's a further question where we invite you to just in a few words describe how water is an issue or has an impact where you live, in your town, village, city, in the region where you are. So if you haven't had a chance there, please fill that out. It will create a little word cloud that I will share in a moment. So that's one thing, and that will also launch us off into our little breakout room discussion. You will be able to choose the room. We have 4 rooms that are going to be open related to the 4 areas that Shannon mentioned earlier around the campaign and where we did the ranking, if you remember. So you'll be able to choose more around floods, droughts, water pollution or mismanagement to join a conversation, to share a bit more about the specific water issues in your little group, to maybe explore some other water projects that might be happening where you are, some of the solutions or ideas to respond to the challenges around these 4 different issues around water. So let me just see with the Menti. Yeah, I guess there's some more responses in. I'll share the screen now if yeah, and we can see those. There might be still a few coming in. I still see it's a bit moving, but there's quite a lot around floods and flooding as an issue where people are based in. There's also things around timing, when water comes and how much, the lack of water management, droughts, storms, snowfall not coming anymore. There's something there, over extraction of water, things in the nature ecosystem, pollution coming up now as a much bigger topic. Yeah, contamination as well, the quality of the food, agriculture was another one, fire risk, droughts, so, and also just extreme weather events. A few different issues, the lack of water management. I think I've shared some innovations that are there. Okay, very interesting. So this will be basically the starting point into the discussion to check in a bit. We'll have Aline, Marco, and then Shannon and myself in the different rooms. And I think since we're running a bit short on time, I won't say more and let us all enter into the breakout groups, and we'll come back for a bit of exchange after that.
We wanted to enable still time for the feedback from these small groups. So we're bringing you back slightly earlier than was written in the chat. I'm not sure if everyone's back in the room. Laura, are you there?
No, I think everybody's back. They're close.
I pass the floor to you then to continue, please.
Okay, yes. So this is the moment now for any questions that might have come up to the speakers around the topics, also any main insights to share. And we won't have time to hear from every single person. So you will find one final question on the Mentimeter that asks you to share a learning and inspiration and insight around water that you've gained from this session. So we encourage everyone to just open that, and you can submit one or multiple responses to that. And also we could hear maybe from 2, 3, 4 people, depending on the how long your sharing is, but to hear a little impression from the breakout group, or also any question to the project speakers. So if you could raise your hand for that, and then we can exchange that way. Yeah, Gianluca.
Just to break the ice,
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I was with Karim, Patrick, and Shannon, and we were discussing flooding, and we focused in particular on the impact that flooding has on farmers. And we tried and brainstorm a little bit on potential solution, and I think that there were a few interesting things. So on one end, there is this, the topic of insurances, and now this is such a new instrument for the agricultural sector or for some farmers in the agricultural sector. And of course, on the other end, I think Patrick brought up some very interesting innovations on the financial sector that also include agriculture and kind of some bonds, territorial bonds for this kind of extreme events. And but then on the other side, Karin and I were a little bit exchanging on the responsibilities of farmers also to find solutions and maybe changing the way that things are done in their own plots. And then I didn't have the time, but I also want to say that it's very important to work at the farm level, and also because when you work at the farm level, you also work on exchanging ideas and flow of information to how things could be done in a different way and everything. But it's also important not to, for me, I also see a very important issue at the territorial level. So, okay, farm level, and farmers need to take responsibilities in their own plot, but let's not forget that climate change has a extensive impact, and so also the administrations and the policymakers need to take their own responsibilities in urban planning and in general rural planning and all these issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this last one is a very valid point. I think for all of the water topics, that it's like a whole landscape issue, not one project, one household is not the scale where you can really significantly change that, even though that I think action and solutions on that level are of course significant. Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah. Okay, any other questions or sharings? I don't know if there's something from also Marco, Aline, Yona, if you listen to some things that were interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
in my group, we had a coincidence that we are both from the same city. How amazing! Not only Italian, but yeah, our region is plagued with pollution from PFAS, from factories, and so the solution they're starting there is also bioremediation, especially with micro remediation with the fungi and stuff. And it's promising, but it's something that it's really worrying us. And also we pointed out that we overlook one of the main pollutants, that it's not chemical, but it's soil sediment. So from agriculture, we get a lot of sediment that it's disturbing crucial ecosystem, the bottom of rivers and water courses. So normally, as humans, we focus only on the poisonous and damaging effect to our health, but simply doing a bad type of agriculture is causing a lot of damage per se without any chemicals added to it.
Okay. I don't know, Aline, did you have something on the water management, or some insight from that group?
Yeah, sure. I think it was mentioned that water mismanagement can be happening on both sides, both in administrational regions and offices, etc., far away from actually the ecosystem, but then also from citizens themselves. Once they receive water as a service, what they then do with it. And I think in both cases, information was again highlighted as a priority. Information, understanding how does the water cycle work, what is our life based on, how much water is actually available, what do we as an administration administration have as capacity to give to you, and to then also receive all these voices. So in our room, Ginevra was commenting on a project that she is working on, and hopefully we'll be able to share on soon. And they are using the methodology of citizens' assemblies and definitely hearing the voices of all sides, as in like, I want to give you this, but I cannot, or you should not be doing this because there simply is no resource that has no limits when we are talking about water. So there was a lot of discussion afterwards as well about legalities, pre-legal, illegal, illegal, demonstration needed, bureaucracy being slow, administration sometimes understanding the framework but not wanting to be the pioneers in breaking the framework. So policy again would need all voices and to listen to all sides. So community-led is key.
Thanks, great. I think this connects quite a lot also to some of the points we had around droughts and too little water. I think we also touched on points of how that impacts farming and different businesses and lifestyles, where people maybe have to use less water in the summer because it's very dry or something, but it doesn't necessarily come to the point where people really realize larger ecological patterns, climate patterns, and have the agency and the knowledge to really respond to it. There might be, restrictions and some measures taken. So I think this was an interesting conversation also around this and to see what's there. And one thing that I couldn't share in the group, but I was recently in the Himalaya region, which is in a very dry region, which really only gets mainly water from glaciers and melting. And they have very traditional water management systems on a community level that manage who gets water when and distributing it. So it really made me think about when we recognize this as a precious resource, how do we come together as a community to manage it and distribute it more fairly? I'm just going to share the slide for a minute, if I can, here, and just to see also some of the voices that were shared here on some learnings and insights. So an understanding of different perspectives, some exciting examples that were appreciated, and the combination of technical knowledge and the community for local impact, a recognition around some similar challenges that are being faced, solutions that are there but maybe not always applied. The key about information and really understanding that translates into agency, and the agency also in the communities themselves. The reduction of the water consumption. Yeah, and then I think the point that we heard also around flooding and the particular impact on farmers, their responsibilities, and also the need to have enough public influence and change there. So I think that complements quite well the sharing. And with that, I think we have some closing words to wrap it up.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Laura, for that, and for the moderators of the breakout groups. I'd now like to pass the floor to Claire Jordan, our Managing Director at AEIDL, who will wrap up today's webinar.
Thank you, Shannon. And I was meant to give a few wrapping words, but there was a very good content already from Aline, from Laura on what was said during this breakout room. So not going to repeat what was said. I'm glad we had these really insightful presentations, and I really want to thank everyone who helped prepare this webinar. Thank you to all of you who came and participated. And of course, thank you to our speakers, everyone who presented and helped run this event. Also from our team, a very big thank you. This, as you know, is one in a series of webinars. There's going to be another one next week, next Wednesday at the same time. It is going to focus on renewable energy. So I highly invite you to participate as well. We will also there hear from local initiatives, local climate actions, who will present what they've done. Maybe what I've learned today in a few very small words, very short, is that really these local initiatives, they rely a lot on the ability to build a sense of community and to engage people, and they've all, we can see, tried and tested different methods to do that. So the importance of building community and tapping into collective intelligence, the importance of an early community engagement. I think we saw that Use Less Water, they really put an emphasis on doing this early in the process. I thought it was also very interesting to see how innovation can mean revisiting ancient methods, traditional methods. It can also mean very, very low-tech solutions. And we had a good example of each of those two things. And so innovation is not always linked to high-tech solutions, and that's very important. But also the importance of getting the right support. So sometimes it comes in the form of expertise, consultancy, community facilitation. That's very, very important. And I'm not going to repeat everything we said about the legal frameworks and the work with administrations at the different levels. The fact that local administrations are not always the ones who can change the policies in place. And so it's really important that the push is made at the right level. And I think maybe a word of conclusion is that we certainly at AEIDL, we believe that a meaningful change can come from empowering local actors, and it helps them when we have flexible funding, simplified procedures, and when the EU level supports those small distributed projects at a very, very local level, where real solutions, tailored solutions can be found. So I think two very good cases were made for this today. And again, thank you very much. I hope you've all enjoyed it and learned something. Please continue to follow ELIF activities, and we hope to see you at one of the following webinars very, very soon. Thank you very much.
Ask you all to please complete the evaluation form. That should be in the chat as well and on this last slide. And then I'd like to just thank everyone and wish you a great day.